5 p.m. Friday evening, December 6, 2019, and we are at the Big Cypress Preserve Oasis Visitor Center, starting our weekend hike on the Florida Trail. We are starting at the southern terminus, or mile 0 of the Florida Trail, which is marked with a monument just a few yards west of the Visitor Center. The beginning of our hike parallels an airstrip which is on the other side of the fence. If you arrive late afternoon or early evening, you can camp along the fence and get a fresh start the next morning. But since there is no place to hang a hammock, we walked for a couple of miles until we found a suitable location. In our group, we had one guy with a tent, one with a hammock, and I was using a tarp. I am hiking with 2 colleagues from work, both much younger than I. Our plan is to hike 30 miles this weekend to the Collier County Rest Area on Interstate 75, which is also known as Alligator Alley. We woke on Saturday morning to a beautiful sunrise and grabbed a quick breakfast before starting to hike. We started the day with our first experience walking across slabs of limestone, which we would encounter again and again throughout the day. We crossed a number of areas where we encountered solution holes in the limestone. Solution holes are formed when carbon dioxide from the decomposition of organic material, nitric oxide from lightning discharges, and sulfur dioxide from burning fossil fuels dissolve into the rainwater, forming an acidic solution which eats away at the limestone. Hikers have to maintain vigilance to avoid stepping in the solution holes and suffering injury. We were expecting to see wildlife along the way, but the first and only alligator we saw was a fake alligator that someone placed in the bushes along the trail. I have to admit, when I turned the corner and caught a glimpse of it, I was slightly startled. One of the most interesting aspects of the hike is the transition between ecosystems, to include marshes, swamps, and hammocks. Marshes are wetlands that support a variety of reeds and grasses, while swamps are defined by their ability to support woody plants and some varieties of trees, such as the bald cypress, which are prevalent throughout the Big Cypress Preserve. Hammock is a term used for stands of trees, usually hardwood, that grow on elevated areas, often just a few inches higher than the surrounding wetlands. Hammocks are the best places to take a break or to set up camp. Trail has opened up a bit. We're on a little bit of a road now. Well, that didn't last long. Back on the trail. Now we're moving into this pine savanna. You can see the underbrush even looks a lot different. This area is much more dry than what we just walked through. It's a beautiful day today. About 70 degrees. And we start to move from the pine savanna back into where there's a few more cypress trees. Got some nice shade right now. We're at about mile 7.5. Okay, at mile 8, we're about halfway to our destination for the night. Passed by mile marker 9, found this picnic table at a place called 10 Mile Camp, but we're not at the 10 mile mark yet. But it's time for a break. Going through an area right now that has obviously been burned, as you can see from these trees. But as you can see from the grass and the little trees, everything is coming back quite nicely. Not exactly a well-worn path, but the trail maintainers have done a good job of keeping the orange blazes where we can see them. Right through the middle of a cypress dome. They tell us this is a good place to get water, but all we see is dry. Hey, we're just getting started on the morning of our second day on the trail. This section of trail has got a lot of overgrowth. Doesn't look like there's been a lot of people through here recently. Yeah, it looks like it's starting to open up though. Sunrise coming up over the pine flats over there. That dirt road sure does look good, but this is where we're going. Transitioning out of the pine flatwoods, moving back to the cypress forest. That's part of the fun of this trip. It's just transitioning from ecosystem to ecosystem. It happens so quickly with just a few inches of a change in elevation. Taking a break before we get to what is proclaimed to be the toughest part of the Florida Trail. Sinking into the mud now, so it gets a little bit more moist as we enter the swampy areas. When I was a kid, my mother used to tell people that I never walked around a mud puddle. As I looked across this mother of all mud puddles, determined to walk right through the middle of it, I imagined my mother looking down and thinking that some things never change. Here is obviously a little bit deeper where people are walking, but as you can see, there's really no way to go around it. We've been up to our ankles in mud, almost lost a shoe a few times. Although hiking through the water isn't the best thing in the world, it's actually very refreshing. It's cool water on our feet. As the sun starts to come up, we're supposed to be in the low 80s today. So right now it actually feels pretty good. So far, no alligators, no snakes. Made it through. Here's Oak Hill Camp. I think we're gonna duck in the shade here. It's still pretty muddy. See if we can find a dry place to relax for a minute. All right, so we hiked in a little bit, found this nice little flat, dry area at Oak Hill Camp. Nice and shady, good break time. So we had lunch. We're back in the mud and the muck for another couple miles, I think. I think these green bushes here are called cocoa plums. I'll have to look that up. Getting back into the swamp here a little bit. A lot of roots, so the footing is somewhat treacherous. Every time you step on one, you're on the verge of slipping and falling. Oh, nice little opening in the trees. Hopefully it won't be quite as muddy through this next section. We shall see. It was a swamp buggy road and they routed us off of it back into the muddy trail through this little, oh geez, a lot of mud. through this little forest of cypress trees, if you can call them that. See the cypress dome in the distance there, and we are heading right through there. In a cypress dome, the tallest trees grow in the deepest water, and the smaller trees grow along the edge in the shallower water. Some cypress domes are circular, but others have a hole in the middle, where the solution hole is too deep in the center for cypress trees to become established, and a water hole or small pond forms. This is the entryway to Thank God Island. They say that because you've just made it through the toughest part of the Florida Trail. I think it's time for us to take another break. View after Thank God Island, after Ivy Camp. They said it was going to get easier, but it looks just the same. The cypress trees were covered with bromeliads. Instead of having their roots in the soil, they wrap around the cypress tree to stay in place. They use photosynthesis to create their own food, and although the trees are often surrounded by water, these air plants obtain moisture from fog and rain. So we've got about 7 or 8 minutes left in the swamp before we make it to the open savanna, and we are looking forward to that. Okay, we just exited the swamp, finally. We are in this open savanna, a lot of grasses. In the distance you can see a cypress dome. You can see from my shadow the sun is starting to get low. So we have been hiking through the water and the swamp and the mud all day long. Open savannas have turned into a muddy track as we're on our last 1.5 miles of this trek. And this is what our terrain looks like as we make our march towards the rest area at 75. Okay, we're coming up towards the interstate now. Job well done. Here's the gate. Oh goodness. Once we pass through the gate, we are at the far east side of the rest area complex. Walking west, we cross the tractor trailer parking lot, then walk past the fire control station, and finally we reach the rest area. As we end our journey through the swamp, my friends and I are tired, hungry, and sore. I turn to them and say that walking through the swamp for an hour is fun. But walking the Florida Trail across all of Big Cypress Preserve is a challenge and an achievement, and we all know it is a memory that we will share for a lifetime. Trips like this indeed make life worth living.